Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are wading into, some really deep water. We're talking about forgiveness.
Yeah, and not the straightforward kind.
Exactly. Not when someone says, I'm sorry, and you sort of move on. We're diving into those hurts you just can't forget.
Yeah.
Situations where the person who caused all that pain, they're unrepentant, maybe they're not even around anymore, or they're just, broken.
Mm-hmm. And our mission today really is to give you maybe a shortcut, or at least a clearer path through that kind of impossible situation. We're pulling together insights from two really different places. First, there's a theological book review, Lysa TerKeurst's Forgiving What You Can't Forget.
Mm-hmm.
And second, we've looked at some very raw, very practical stuff from an online support group. It's focused entirely on recovery after infidelity, so intense personal betrayal.
Right. And what's pretty amazing is how these two sources, coming from such different angles, faith on one side, trauma recovery on the other, they land on almost the exact same core idea.
Yeah, it's this striking conclusion about whose actions actually matter the most when it comes to your healing. It might not be who you think.
Okay, so it's about shifting danger from their failure to our response.
Precisely. It becomes about our internal state.
Yeah.
Let's start there with this idea of forgiveness as something required internally.
Okay, so the book review kicks things off with something we all know, really.
Yeah.
Everyone gets hurt. Life involves pain. It's inevitable in, as the source puts it, a fallen world.
Mm-hmm.
And when that pain hits, our first instinct often is fear, right? And that fear makes us want to control things.
Right.
Manipulate, fix it ourselves.
Exactly. And that desperate need to control what we can't actually control. That's where the real trouble starts internally. The challenge of unforgiveness really flares up when someone does something incredibly hurtful and then they just don't see it, or they can't. They genuinely might believe they did nothing wrong, or maybe they're just too damaged themselves to get it.
So they never ask for forgiveness. Why would they if they don't think they need it?
Right. And meanwhile, you're the one left holding this huge weight of emotion. Bitterness starts creeping in.
And sometimes that bitterness feels like justice, like you're
Right.
punishing them by holding on to it, hoping they'll eventually, get what's coming to them.
It feels that way, but the sources here really flip that script. They argue the real danger shifts. It's not just that the other person isn't repenting. The greater danger, according to this view, is that we start damaging ourselves further, piling up sin upon sin, as the review puts it, while we're laser-focused on their mistakes.
Wow.
Yeah, and it even cites scripture, like Ephesians 4.31, this instruction to actively put away bitterness and wrath and anger, all that stuff.
That feels like a huge ask psychologically. You're hurt, maybe deeply betrayed, and the message is you need to manage your internal state first, before they even acknowledge anything.
It is a massive demand, no question.
Yeah.
But the goal here seems to be about internal freedom. Forget theology for a second. Just psychologically, bitterness is like a poison you drink yourself, hoping the other person suffers. The sources are saying you can't let their lack of action, their non-apology, become your excuse for staying stuck in that poison, for letting it corrupt you.
Okay, so I think I'm getting it. The path out starts with self-correction. It's something you have to do for you no matter what the other person does or doesn't do, like declaring emotional independence.
That's a great way to put it, emotional independence. And it's underlined pretty clearly in the source material. There are warnings, like the one from Matthew 6.45, suggesting that refusing to forgive others keeps you chained to the past, chained to their actions. So the big takeaway early on is self-examination, being open to changing yourself. That has to happen first. It's step one. An act of self-care, really.
To make this less abstract, the book uses this really vivid analogy. It comes from a trip the author took to Israel. Her guide pointed out something specific about the healing miracles Jesus performed in Jerusalem. There are only 2 recorded in the book of John.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting, because these 2 stories become perfect illustrations of this internal choice we're talking about. You have the lame man at the pool of Bethesda in John chapter 5, and the blind man at the pool of Siloam in John chapter 9.
Okay.
And they basically show 2 paths you can take when you're deeply hurt. The path of excuses, focusing on others, versus the path of just doing what you need to do, obedience, in the context of the story.
Let's take the lame man first. He'd been there for, 38 years? Waiting for someone to help him into the pool when the water stirred, believing that would heal him. And Jesus asks him a really direct question. Do you want to be healed? But his answer isn't just yes.
No, it's not. He immediately points out where he says, "Sir, I have no one to help me." His focus is entirely on what other people aren't doing for him. He's so fixated on needing help, on the barrier, that he almost misses the direct offer of healing right in front of him.
That's quite an insight. We do that, don't we? Cling to the injury or the reasons we can't heal, maybe because it feels safer or has become part of our identity.
It seems so. And notice Jesus' response. He doesn't engage with the excuse. He doesn't say, yeah, those people should be helping you.
No, he just tells the man, basically, get up, take your mat, and walk.
And the healing happens just between the man and Jesus. It underlines that the crucial action was his response, independent of anyone else around him. And later, there's this little follow-up instruction Jesus gives him. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. Again, the focus is on the healed man's own future choices and actions, not on blaming or fixing the people who ignored him for decades.
Okay, that's powerful. Now, contrast that with the blind man in just 9. What happens there?
Well, the disciples immediately fall into that very human trap, blame.
Huh.
They ask, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? They need someone to be accountable.
Right, find the cause, assign the fault.
And Jesus shuts that down completely. He basically says, neither. This happened so that God's works could be displayed in him. No blame, no shame attached to the condition itself. And the healing. Again, it's not dependent on sorting out fault. Jesus gives the man instructions, go wash in the pool of Siloam. The man obeys. He washes. He comes back seeing.
He just moved forward.
He moved forward. He got a new way to see the world, literally and figuratively, based on his own obedience, not based on resolving the past or figuring out who was to blame.
Wow. So the analogy lays out this choice really starkly. Are you going to be like the lame man, waiting for external conditions to change, waiting for others to act? Or are you going to be like the blind man, focusing on your own steps, your own obedience to whatever path leads you toward healing, regardless of the why or the who of the original hurt?
That's precisely the framework these miracles provide. A new way to walk and a new way to see, both requiring an independent choice. #3. Reclaiming power over personal healing.
Okay, that framework is compelling, but let's bring it right down to earth. How does this connect to something as raw and painful as, say, infidelity in a marriage? This is where we bridge to that online support community you mentioned. Razone After Infidelity. It's focused specifically on trying to reconcile after that kind of betrayal. Maybe we should quickly explain their terms just so listeners understand.
Good idea. In that community, when they talk about reconciliation, they often just call it R. The person who had the affair is the wayward spouse, or WS. The person who was betrayed is the betrayed spouse, or BS. It's direct language, and the discussions are incredibly honest, sometimes brutally so. But what they share lines up so closely with that lame man analogy.
It's always striking when you see deep, maybe even spiritual wisdom echoed in very practical, on-the-ground trauma advice, isn't it?
It really is. And the absolute core realization that comes up again and again in those discussions, it's this. Don't let a broken person hold any power over your healing. Don't give them a say in how you get better. And absolutely do not hinge your own recovery on their behavior or progress.
That just reframes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But hang on. If you're doing that, if you're focusing solely on your own healing independently, isn't there a risk? How do you avoid, enabling bad behavior? Or just accepting something truly destructive? It sounds like it could let the WS off the hook.
See, that's the crucial distinction. This realization isn't about letting them off the hook. It's actually the safeguard for the betrayed spouse. Because as many people in that group point out, a lot of wayward spouses are, frankly, far too broken to make any true repair, at least initially. They're dealing with their own deep issues.
Right.
So if the BS ties their own healing, their own stability, to the WS proving they're fixed, well, the BS is basically guaranteeing they'll stay stuck in trauma. Because the WS might not be capable of providing that stability. Certainly not right away.
You can't be healed by the person who hurt you, or at least you can't make your healing dependent on them.
Exactly. The advice that flows from this is critical. People who cheat are often operating from a place that isn't healthy or safe. Therefore, the BS must take the lead in their own recovery. They have to trust themselves to make good decisions for their own well-being.
So this independent healing, it's not about passively accepting the situation. It's about actively setting boundaries to protect your own stability, regardless of how unstable the other person might be.
Precisely. And it's interesting, even people in the group who are maybe skeptical of the religious angle of TerKeurst's book, they still pulled out phrases they found incredibly helpful. Like the idea that it's okay to be not ready to forgive yet. That permission was seen as a gem. So even if the overall package felt too grace-filled for some in their raw pain, that core truth about independent healing still resonated.
Yeah, that makes sense. The truth cuts through, even when the context feels messy. #tag4. The strategy of 3 repairs and the clean slate.
Okay, so if we take this idea of independent healing How does it actually play out strategically?
Mhm.
Especially if the goal is reconciliation, trying to save the relationship. This is where some members of that support group offer a really practical model. They talk about needing to address 3 separate injuries, not just one.
3 injuries. I thought the injury was to the marriage, to the betrayed person.
Well, yes, but they break it down. First, there's I was hurt. That's the BS's personal healing journey that needs dedicated attention. Second, there's my spouse hurt themselves, meaning the WS has their own healing to do from whatever brokenness, addiction, or character issues led them to betray in the first place. That's their separate work. And then third, there's our marriage was decimated. That's the repair of the relationship itself, the shared entity.
Okay, I see the distinction, but why is separating them like that so important? Can't they just work on the marriage together?
You think so? But here's the problem they identify. If the BS makes their personal healing dependent on the WS's progress or on the marriage's progress, they fall back into that codependent trap. The BS's stability becomes reliant on the WS, who is likely still very fragile and unreliable, especially early on. The BS essentially becomes the lame man again, waiting by the pool for the WS to get their act together.
Hmm. And the WS probably feels immense pressure then, too. Like they have to be perfectly healed for the BS.
Exactly. It sets everyone up for failure. The wisdom here is you have to strengthen the individuals first, allow them their independent healing paths before you can effectively rebuild the shared connection. Heal the parts before you fix the whole.
That must feel incredibly counterintuitive, especially when you're just reeling from the shock and pain. You want to cling together, maybe.
Totally counterintuitive.
Hmm.
But the descriptions of successful reconciliation often involve this process of figuratively breaking up
Mm-hmm.
and then choosing to get back together, but as fundamentally new people.
New people. How does that work?
It's about identity. The betrayed spouse stops being defined solely by the betrayal. They reclaim their own agency, their own life, their own strength, independent of the WS. And the wayward spouse has to stop being defined by their past actions and actively build and demonstrate a new, reliable character. It's a fundamental shift for both.
And the key, it sounds like, was focusing on becoming the best version of ourselves, like the community member said, regardless of whether the reconciliation actually worked out in the end. That focus on self, that's where the power comes back.
Absolutely. That internal focus builds resilience. It means your well-being isn't contingent on the relationship surviving. And paradoxically, that's often what allows the relationship to potentially survive and become something new. Those who managed it described it as creating a genuinely new relationship, feeling like they got a clean slate, not by ignoring the past, but by dealing with it through intense individual work first.
Right.
And this loops right back to the broader advice from TerKeurst's book, too. Forgiveness isn't just about stopping the pain. It's about reclaiming your future, recognizing that your life, which is still full of possibility, shouldn't be forever tainted, as she puts it, by someone else who lost their way.
Mm.
Hashtag outro.
You know what really hits me after weaving these sources together is that powerful convergence. Whether you come at this from a place of faith, trying to avoid bitterness and follow a spiritual mandate, or you come at it from a purely practical, trauma-informed place of needing to survive and regain stability, the core message ends up being remarkably the same.
Yeah.
To move past these hurts, you can't just forget the kind where the other person offers nothing. You have to realize your healing is up to you. It's an independent choice. It cannot depend on their actions, their repentance, or even their ability to change.
It really puts the locus of control back inside yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that raises a challenging question for anyone listening who might be in that kind of situation. If we accept, even just hypothetically, the idea that our inner selves, our spirits, can be renewed day by day, regardless of our circumstances, regardless of the wreckage of the past, then we start to embrace this idea that our current troubles, however agonizing they feel right now, are, in the grand scheme of things, temporary. The sources touch on this, using language from the Bible, 2 Corinthians, about present troubles being small and temporary compared to an enduring future, producing something valuable, a glory even.
A difficult perspective when you're hurting, but maybe a necessary one.
Perhaps. It leads to that final thought, the final challenge for you, the listener.
Okay.
If your future truly holds possibility, if it's not entirely defined by the past, then what independent choice, what step, however small, are you making today?
A choice to stop letting someone else's brokenness, someone else's past actions, limit the person you are becoming, the person you are maybe meant to be.
Exactly. What independent step are you taking for your own walk, your own sight?